Azhelle, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm great, Ken. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to talking with you. I have to confess something. You're the first guest where I've actually got to call my grandson and my granddaughter and say, "Guess who we have on the show today?" And so I asked them a bunch of questions that I can't wait to dive into with you
Uh-oh.
in a little bit around toys. But I already did the intro, of course, before this, and so I kind of want to dive in and get into. I mean, how did you get so into toys, and how did you develop this career that you have now?
Well, I was first really into kids and I wanted to be a teacher. That
Okay.
was my main focus. I used to have like fake school for my brother at home. He hated it. I gave him gold stars. It was a great time. And then and then as I grew up, my sister was like, "You should look into other careers, as well." So I looked into art and design, and then I studied at the Fashion Institute of Technology, exhibition design. And so I wanted to do kids exhibitions like children's museums and stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
And then that program just happened to only be 2 years long. So I was like, well, I need a bachelor's. What programs are there? One of my teachers told me about a toy design program at FIT. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I could learn how to build things with my hands, how to draw. I'll still be working on kids' product. And so that was it. I went in there. And then after that, I got a job in the toy industry. And it's just kind of been going from there.
And that school's in New York City, right?
Yeah. FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology, is in New York City. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I live in Brooklyn Heights right now. We actually just bought a
Oh,
place up in Nyack, just outside the city. Our daughter went to a similar school on the other coast called FITM, if you've heard of that.
Oh, I think I've
Fashion
heard of FITM.
Institute of Design and Merchandising. So
I didn't know that oh, a similar school, not similar major.
not a similar major, no.
Right.
So you got into the toy world. What was the first job coming out of school?
I was a new product development designer for Horizon Group USA. They do like a lot of the craft products that you see in Walmart. So my
Okay.
job was to like they would say, Azhelle, Tulip is like dominating this space in Walmart. We want to compete with them. Come up with something that's innovative that could compete with them. So my job was to come up with patentable product and ideas and brand concepts that we could pitch to the buyers at Walmart. That was like my main job. And I got 3 patents from that job. So it's pretty good.
Does it in that world? Is it? It's funny because I was listening to you on another podcast, and I was like, and then I was thinking about my grandkids, and I was thinking about myself being a kid and playing with toys, and
Yeah.
I sort of feel like the hits in that world are like huge, right? Like right now, like Minecraft is just like massive, right?
Yeah.
When you're in that world and you're designing things, are you constantly like looking for home runs, or are you just kind of looking for traction of any kind? Like, what does it look like kind of early in your career?
It depends. It depends on what you're working on. Like if you're working on a lower price point item, you are not really thinking about this is going to be the next big thing. You're thinking, does this hit on a current trend? Does this have high margin? Is the box pretty enough that someone's going to pick it up? And you're just trying to sell it into the buyer. But when someone comes to you with an opportunity, like the chief marketing officer might come to you and say there's a hole in the market and we want to develop a brand like this, that's when you
Mm-hmm.
know that, like, oh, they're trying to develop something big, they're trying to develop that home run item. And especially they get like all the teams involved to brainstorm on it, even like accounting people, marketing people, like ideas will come from everywhere in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll kind of get diluted down to the design and a product team, and then they'll kind of hash it all out. So that's when you're working on something that ideally you guys want to blow up, but we all know like the customer chooses. Like at the end of the day, we don't we don't make
Right.
the hits.
Did
Yeah.
did you get to be involved early in your career on stuff that was I guess more conceptual like that, like where you guys were just going in and like do we creating a big idea, or early in your career is it more being part of a functional team that's trying to execute?
It was early in my career, it was more being part of a functional team. When I moved on to Toys R Us, I was on a brand that I didn't realize had like such a cult following, but the brand was Journey Girls, which was Toys R Us's private label brand of 18-inch dolls. And so
Okay.
because it's private label, it's like, the Toys R Us version of 18-inch dolls. It's not American Girl. So in my head, I'm like, oh, it's just like, the private label, brand, like whatever.
Right.
But like, no, there are like dedicated blogs to this day of people that love Journey Girls. Like they love that brand. So then that just kind of puts new focus where you're like, oh, they're paying attention to all the details. If we repeat a pattern on an outfit, they're going to know. Like they're
Right.
like not
Right.
messing around.
Right. There's
Yeah.
some people paying attention for sure, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then like as I grew into my career, the last company I worked for full time was called Creative Kids, and they were more focused on like mass, like they did like mass business for like Target and Big Lots and those mass like lower price point toys, but like they have like a big shelf presence. So what I luckily got to do, I really cared about the products we were creating. So I got to develop like new brands with fun, like catchy names like Craft Vibes Only. And I got to work on brands like Kitty Dough, which is like a different version of a Play-Doh brand, but it's a little bit more affordable. And we just worked really hard to make affordable toys for everybody. Like, we wanted even the kids that couldn't afford the premium products to still be able to have a high quality product at the end of the day.
Let me ask you at that point in your career, like, so when you're going to school and when you're finding out that there's this major that you can go in the toy direction and everything, and you're like, I like
Yeah.
kids, and it's all based around, it sounds like fun, right? Like I like kids,
Yeah,
I
they're
want to
so
be in this
cute.
environment, yeah.
Yeah.
But then when you get into it, is it still fun, or does it become just, I mean, I guess you wouldn't be still doing it if there wasn't some fun in it, but
Right.
does it become more like a job, or is it still a pretty cool atmosphere to be in?
Well, that's a good question. As a designer and a product developer, have to say it still is pretty fun.
Yeah.
And I actually like that there are aspects that are serious. Like I remember there'd be moments where I'd be sitting at my desk surrounded by like samples of products that I designed, and my job for the day, like when my task list was review all of these and literally like play with them to make sure that they work. Like that is the task for today. And it used to feel like, this is so silly, I can't believe this is my job. But then like the next day it would be like, oh, fly to like Minnesota and meet with people in Target to review the product. So it was like there was a nice juxtaposition of like we're official and doing official business with PowerPoints and presentations and margins, but I also sometimes sit at my desk and like play with Play-Doh or Kitty
Right.
Dough. So
Right. I was
yeah.
thinking of you, and I was thinking of that movie, and I don't know if you've seen it because it's
Big.
pretty old. Yeah, Big,
Yeah, everyone
totally.
talks about Big. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking about that, and like the giant keyboard that you jump around on and
Oh my
stuff like
gosh.
that. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what happens next? So, how did you end up going from kind of this corporate toy person to more independent then?
Oh, the pandemic, man. The
Oh,
pandemic kind
okay.
of shifted my perspective on a lot of things. I live in the city and New York City,
Yep.
and I traveled a
It's
lot for
funny if,
whatever.
not to interrupt, but it's
I know,
so
I know
funny
where
if you live here and we all
I
just say
know.
the
We
city and
just
we're
say
like,
the city. I'm like, wait, no,
And you know
New
what?
York
And
City.
no, and you know what? Everybody else does know what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like
They're like, oh, the
it's
city.
yeah, the city. What do you think I'm talking about? Jacksonville or Atlanta or something?
So
No.
so
Duh.
terrible.
It's
New
it's a
York
little
City.
yeah, okay.
There are other cities, I guess. No.
But we're in the city,
Yeah,
so
we're in
that's
the
okay.
city. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was traveling a lot. Like I was traveling to Jersey. Like most of the toy jobs I held were actually in New Jersey or like up North Manhattan. So I was traveling a lot for work, right? And then when the pandemic hit, I realized how expensive that was.
Right.
Not just expensive financially, but like emotionally. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how much time I don't spend in my house. I've never seen 12 noon in my apartment on a Tuesday. And
Right.
it just gave me this perspective where I was like, what kind of way is this to live? You know what I'm saying? So I just started thinking, that was in the back of my mind as I was doing my day to day work now, remote from in the pandemic. And then people started reaching out to me because I'd started a podcast with the blessing of my boss. I'd started a podcast about the toy industry, just talking about how I think about toys, how I think about design. So people started reaching out and they were like, hey, can you help me with this? And I was like, no, I work full time, but I have a friend you can reach out to. Here's their contact, or listen to this episode. It will help you with that question. And then one day I got this offer that was like really good. Like it was a popular book brand that had sold like millions of copies, and they wanted to develop a product. And they were like, "Will you help us?" And I was like, "Sure." So I quit my job, took a big pay cut to do that, but worked with these people, hired, got one more client. And then I was just kind of on my own through those two decisions. And little by little, I figured out what was going to be like my kind of evergreen product, my base product for my new business that I would couple with this client work that I was doing. So ever since then, I've just kind of been testing different client work price points and like offers and different digital products that I could give, like my course, Toy Creators Academy. So that's kind of how it unfolded.
That's really cool. So that one client that sort of like got you to kind of lean into the discomfort a little bit. They didn't
Yes,
provide you with financial security, but they provided you with enough to go like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I better do it now. And it was already on your mind. It sounds like, yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
That's very cool. And how has it gone since then? I mean, in terms of like building the business, have you been able to replace your income? Have you been able to exceed it, or is it more of a lifestyle thing, or all of the above?
It's a roller coaster
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
emotions. So
Sure.
like I've earned more than I've earned in my full-time job, my
Right.
last full-time job. But the business is expensive. So
Sure.
I'm like right now going through cost-cutting exercises with my team and looking at like the tools we use, like what do we really need and what's like not working, because I'm generating a like more income than I ever made full time, but we can't keep it all because running a
Yeah,
business
yeah.
is way more expensive than I thought. So it's, it's supporting my lifestyle, it's paying my people, and the business has extra money to reinvest like in marketing. But my goal for this year, obviously, is all entrepreneurs, is to like
Mhm.
double my income. So then I can actually pay myself, will double my revenue so that I can actually pay myself the income that I was getting before full time.
Is your
That's my
staff
goal.
is your staff all here in the U.S.?
No, like so they're all part-timers, all
Hmm.
contractors. There's like two in the US, three overseas. They're all part-time. They're all different like graphics and editing and like customer service management, copywriting, like all different categories.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
So, what has been? I'm curious, like growing up, and I'm gonna just switch topics completely,
Okay.
but because I started thinking about talking to you, and I'm like, I was definitely like, I guess we all were, but I was just like, I was kind of a toy nut, right? I was like Saturday morning cartoons and like
Oh, me
toys, and
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like Hong Kong Fooey and all that, and I'm a bit older than you, so like some of
I
my
loved
cartoons made that.
recess.
There we go.
Uh-huh.
Um, but what were your mainstays when you were a kid? Any that come to mind in terms of, and I'm sure it was like different things at different times, but as far as
Oh,
toys,
one toy. I was obsessed with Polly Pockets. Like
oh, you must
obsessed.
be the same age. Are you in your early to mid 30s?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's my daughter's age, so I
Oh,
remember.
really?
Yeah,
I
totally. How
yeah,
about Beanie
I
Babies? Did that ever cross your
no.
path? Not as much.
I mean, it did cross my path, but I think I don't know. I didn't love them that much. I like Polly Pocket.
Yeah,
You know what? I grew up once I got over like physical toys and I got into like video games. I
yeah.
then became a Sims person. So I think
Okay.
I really just like building worlds and like operating little
Yeah,
people. Like so it was like Polly Pocket translated into the Sims kind of.
totally.
So that yeah.
Well, I feel like, and I do feel like it was like your generation that had all these games, whether they were electronic or real, with like Beanie Babies, or what were some of the other things that you'd have to take care of? There was some other stuff
Oh,
like that.
Cabbage Patch, the
Yeah,
Quints, the Quints. They were
yeah.
like these little doll. I had them all. I loved them all. Yeah, the little Quints. I love those. Those are
So
so
it
cute.
seemed like
This is
that
probably
became
why I
the.
was obsessed with kids, right?
There
This
you
is
go.
probably
Because they're teaching you to be a mom when you're like 8 years old or whatever,
yes.
right?
But my brain changes that from like I don't want to mother them. I want to like make products for them or make museums
Right.
for them. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah.
It's really cool. I've started thinking about my stuff, and yeah, I was like kind of a traditional dude, I guess. I'm thinking about it. Like, I liked all
Yeah.
my old army stuff and the race car guys and all of
Yeah.
that. But I was super into all of it until, like, I guess everyone says this, until I wasn't, right? It's almost like, and it actually was never from some epiphany like I don't like toys anymore. It's like kind of the cool factor, right? In like junior high school or so, where you're like, I'm not playing with that stuff anymore, even though you kind of like
Really?
secretly. I think so.
I
I think
remember
so.
when I started to die off of Polly Pockets. I remember it because I would set up my Polly Pockets on like our giant dining room table, and I would set them up in rows like a neighborhood, and then I
Yeah.
would use my Polly cars and I would drive them around, and they would like have a life. Like that's what how
Yeah.
I would play.
Sure.
And I do remember when I started to set them up, and the setup was longer than the playtime. And then I remember thinking one day, like, wow, I spent all this time setting them up and I really don't even want to play. And then, like, just little by little, I was like,
Yeah.
maybe I'll
You're
just
like
set
the
up like
return on
four of
investment.
them.
You're like the
Yeah,
return on investment just isn't happening here. Like
it's
this is
not there
not.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny. We lived under when I was really young, probably 6 or 7 years old. We lived up in Seattle, and there's this Seattle floating bridge, or the Lake Washington floating bridge, or whatever they call it, which is the big bridge there that links like Mercer Island to Seattle. And we
Okay.
lived at the base of it. We had like a rental house at the base of this bridge, and I'd go under there. It was just a perfect area to hang out if you're a kid and don't mind getting dirty, right? And I was like thinking about that, and I'm like, I would do that right now. You know what I mean? Like the only reason I stopped
Yeah,
doing that is we moved. Like, but that was fun. Like we'd set up all
it
this
was
stuff and like ramps and everything else. It was so cool.
that
Um,
was so cool.
all right, I'm gonna tell you. And my 7-year-old grandson told me he's like, well, you can share my idea with her, but you need to let her know that it's my idea. And I said I will. But I asked
Okay.
him. I said, what are your favorite? So this is my from my 7-year-old grandson and my 3-year-old granddaughter. I
I
said,
can't
what do you?
believe you have a 7-year-old grandson.
Oh,
Wow.
we actually have one, a brand new one too, named Elliot, that's like 4 months old. But
Oh,
um, so this is from Owen. Hi, Owen, if you're listening. Uh, I said, Owen, what are the best things out there right now? And he said, Minecraft Legos,
oh, okay.
uh, Pokeballs, huge.
Oh, really? Still
Yeah,
interesting.
still. He's kind of an old school kid, though. In fact, this last one will really tell you that he is. He's collecting snow globes, like the old globes that you like shake up. And yeah, he's
Oh,
got 16 snow globes. Isn't that cute?
that's really cute.
But that's not his idea. So I said, "What's your idea then? What's the toy you want that you do not
Okay.
have yet?" And he said, "A Minecraft creeper robot." Do you ever get involved with Minecraft, or do you know what it is?
I've played it once. I have a
Yeah,
friend that's obsessed, but
he's
yeah, no,
so
not really.
obsessed. He's
What's the
super into it.
creeper?
I was hoping you'd know. We might have to
I
just take a pass on that. I was just
now I
kind of
have to
like,
look it up.
and I think what it's going to
Minecraft
be
creep.
is, you know
Oh,
how
I
you're,
see it.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
What's it look like?
It looks like a blocky robot. It
Yeah,
looks like a blocky robot.
that's what he said. He kind of clarified it for me. He said it was like a robot, but I guess maybe he's thinking of one outside of the game or something. I'm not sure.
Oh, like they don't
Ju-
have a physical toy version of this.
I don't think so.
Oh, they
That must
should.
be what he's suggesting. There you go.
Oh, but it's all about like who owns the Minecraft license, and then the
I
toy
know. I
company would
get
have to
it.
make the deal with them, and then it's like, is it worth it? And
You know
you
what the
know
most bizarre thing is now is,
what?
and who knows, maybe you don't think it's that bizarre because it helps sell
What?
toys, but all
What?
the weirdos that make YouTube videos of just their kid playing with toys at home for hours and hours, it's
Yeah.
bizarre. And they'll have like 23 million views on some kid putting together a Lego toy.
Yeah. I
Whoa,
mean,
when
no,
did
we
that
love
happen?
it. We love it.
Yeah,
And
of
like over the
course.
past like 5 years, that's what
Yeah,
happened. Yeah, toy companies started maybe like 7 years now. Like I remember toy companies started signing a lot of influencers around the Blippy craze time, like
yeah.
YouTubers, which was really
Yeah, so
cool.
guys, what we're talking about here, just for like the audience, is because the only reason I know is because it's my
Yeah,
grandson watching these videos, is
yeah,
they'll literally pay these kids as influencers, same way you would like an Instagram influencer, a Kim
yeah,
Kardashian to come to your club or
yeah,
something,
yeah.
pay these kids who have followings, they're 8 years old, and they're like opening,
Wild.
doing like the unboxing of like a new Lego toy or something, and then
Yeah,
putting it together. The big one that he first started getting into was Cars, back in the day, from the movie
yeah,
Cars.
yeah.
Yeah, and all those like Steve McQueen and all those things, and that's like a huge YouTube video thing in and of itself.
Like they made a Lego version of it, or just like of the
No,
cars.
that one, no. I was
Oh,
just switching gears there,
oh,
showing
okay.
you my expansive knowledge of
Your
the toy
brain is like
industry.
mine. Now I'm like, I know how my husband feels when I like talk to him, and then I go like there and there, and he's like, when did we change conversations?
Yeah,
I'm like,
he's like
I
back to center. You're like, I thought you were with me.
don't know.
Granddaughter is all things Frozen. She can't get enough.
Still,
Ridiculous. Like
wow.
My daughter and son-in-law bought a blue house upstate, and she swears it's an Elsa house from, so they can't paint
Oh.
it. Yeah, it's like her house. So, Minnie Mouse. So again, these kids are kind of old school, right? Minnie
Oh, wow,
Mouse,
they are.
and then Peppa Pig, huge. Peppa
Oh
Pig
yeah,
fan.
Peppa Pig. Oh my
Peppa
God,
Pig's
Peppa
killing it.
Pig. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's killing it. That's
So,
hilarious.
what's next for you in what have you learned? I guess now transitioning. So, what's it been 2 to 3 years since you transitioned out on your own?
Yeah, it was July 4th, 2020. Funny
Okay,
enough,
cool.
my
So you're like two and a
Independence
half years
Day,
in.
right?
Nice. So
Yeah, two and a half years in.
what have you learned in that 2.5 years? What have been the biggest lessons for you?
Oh man, for me, for my students slash clients, like for who? Like there's so many
For
lessons.
you,
I
I
guess
think for
in
you personally, like as a
yeah.
business person and as a leader, like what have you learned?
Oh my gosh. Okay, like number one, legal stuff. Like how everyone says you got to like set up your business to be legally protected and hire someone to get all your documents in order and all that stuff. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah,
But you also have to read and understand everything that they're building for you in your business and make sure that they fully understand what your business is when they're building those things for you. Because
right,
when I was creating the business I have now, a lot of people didn't understand it. So I found
yeah,
myself when I was building like NDAs or agreements for people to be a part of my virtual pitch events and all this other stuff. Like I thought that they understood what I was asking them to create, and then they didn't. Like they wouldn't realize the kinds of things I wanted to protect and why. And
right,
how I was going to be using these agreements. So, like when you're working with somebody to help you set up for legal, just you have to know your business model. You have to be able to explain it, and then when they give you the documents, you've got to read them and know exactly what they mean. So,
right. When you need to be like 100% around all your NDA type stuff, non-compete,
yeah,
proprietary information in your industry, and not just the
yeah,
language, but the ability to execute it like through a contract's
yeah,
got to be like, yeah. So,
yeah.
so were there some trips in that area, and then you had to find the right
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, I mean, I just, it's not, I wouldn't say it's their fault because at the end of the day, you're the business owner.
Yeah,
Anything that you put out and you put your name on is your responsibility and your fault. But yeah, just like I think realizing there was definitely a shift when I left corporate to be on my own, where I realized that there was a level of responsibility that I didn't realize I was expecting other people to take on when I gave
right,
them tasks to do. Because when you're
right,
working in corporate, everybody is trying to keep their job, get that business going. They all have the same goal. So when you give them something to do, they know that they're all in the same goal. When you're working with service providers, they don't have the same goal as you. You have
right.
to like show them what your goal is. You have to make them want the same thing that you want, and then you give them the project. But then you still have to review the work that you're getting out of it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely had some trip ups where like agreements weren't what I thought they meant. The process in which I was supposed to be using those agreements, they thought one thing, I thought another thing. So then clients were confused. So yeah, I definitely had that issue.
God, it's so interesting that you're talking about that and I feel like you're processing it better than I did when I was young in
Oh,
my business career because I had an accountant. I had an accountant that, in my opinion, did not do a good job. Like we sold a
right.
company and we did not get what I would consider the advice that we paid for. Right, like it wasn't very good, and so we ended up paying a ton of taxes. But as you're talking about it, like you're assuming responsibility. I guess I'm going to now today, 30 years later or whatever it's been, 25 years later. But I was like that mother blah blah blah. And it's like, hey, I hired him. I didn't really vet him out that well. I didn't really do my homework. I just kind of assumed, like you're saying, that he would know his stuff.
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't use him again. I don't even know
Right.
if he's doing the same kind of business, but yeah, I was really like, oh, I didn't make as much off that deal as I should have because of so and so, not really because of my own shortcomings. So good on you for recognizing that because I think recognizing it quick, like that, it's like first step to admitting a
Yeah,
problem. Solving a problem is admitting you
it
have one.
is.
So yeah,
Yeah. And I've realized another thing I learned recently is like if you have someone on your team and you're feeling like the work they're doing isn't quite matching what you're wanting, likely they're feeling the same thing. I learned that when I was on the hunt for like an online business manager for my business. And actually, in the interview process of talking to one of the candidates, I learned that. Like she taught me that. And I was telling her my problems, and she's like, likely if you're experiencing those problems, your person on your team feels the same way. And she was totally right. And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that.
So
Like, I
what's
just,
the takeaway? Like, what's the action that you
I
took
mean,
from that knowledge?
so like making changes, like, okay, so you're not happy doing this task, and I'm not happy with the results of you doing it. So let's find something else for you to do,
Right.
saving time and saving money. Like, yeah, like massive time and money saved. So
So
like,
do you consider yourself both inherently, but also from that experience, just being a pretty direct person when it comes to like giving people feedback or
I am, when I give the feedback, I am direct, but I think I wait very long to
it might
give the
take a while to get
feedback.
there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
don't want to. I don't want to make you feel bad. But then by the
Right.
time I tell you, I'm just like, "Hi, I hate this.
Yeah. 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 It's
Do
been
better."
stewing. It's been just building up.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know
Like,
what? We've already had this conversation like 15 times in my
and
head.
they're like, "No."
So like now they're like, what? You're just telling me about this for the first time,
Yeah,
right?
no, I can't. Or like, I'll think I told them, but me telling them is like, oh, could you please fix XYZ? But really, I should have said, XYZ should have never been done this way in
Yeah.
the first
XYZ
place.
doesn't work. Yeah.
Right. But like, whatever. So, and I just think you need to hire people that give you the freedom to think about other things. Like, I hired a
Hmm.
lot of like task-based people in early on in my business because that's what I could afford. But like, I tell my students to reevaluate their toy careers every year. I tell them to reevaluate their toy businesses every year. And you got to do that in your own business. Like, reevaluate. Okay, in like a year ago, I hired all these people and I bought all these tools because it was the cheapest way to execute this problem I had. But
Hmm.
now I have more funds and less time. So maybe I need to reevaluate those tools and those people. And maybe I can hire an external service to take care of some of that and use these people for something that is going to grow the business in a different way. And
Right.
that's something that I realized I waited way too long to analyze early on in my business. And I was actually doing more work and spending the same amount of money, but doing more work than I needed to. So, yeah, like
It sounds
all
like you're
that.
evolving though really fast. I mean, we're talking about 2.5 years since you broke off, right? It's not like years and years and years. So like you're picking this
Well,
stuff up, it sounds like pretty quickly.
I feel like I have to. I'm 34. I got to have kids, I got to
Yeah.
get this together. I got to like
Well,
make money. I got to get, I got to get it together.
well, there's also I think when you own it and when it's your money, the lessons are frankly just a lot more painful, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
rewards can be more rewarding as well, but
Yeah.
it's like, oops, bad hire. There went fifty
Oh
thousand
my,
dollars or
oh
whatever.
my gosh.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
so
One
cool.
bad
What
hire, one bad ad, one, you know?
So I think so one of the big lessons you said is knowing that if something's on your mind, it's probably on their mind as well. What have been some other
Yeah.
stuff and then also hiring around, probably looking for professionals in areas where you're not maybe the
Yeah.
one. That's been a good
Yes.
one for me as well. I've always been I try to be well versed. I think as business owners, we have to be well versed, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you're
Yeah.
the head of HR and sometimes you're the head of finance, and I'm always the
Right.
chief technical officer, I
Right.
feel like.
Yeah.
And then I kid myself into thinking that means I'm good at it. You know what I mean? Just because I had to do it for a while. And
Yes.
oh, actually, it relates to the accountant story I was just telling you. So I am really good with numbers, but being good with numbers and understanding tax law is two completely different things, right? It's like
Interesting. Yeah.
complete foreign languages.
Yeah.
But in my mind, all he was doing, all this guy that I didn't like, who was his fault that I lost all my money, you know, that all he was doing was popping money into, whatever 20 years ago equivalent was of like TurboTax, right? So I'm like, I can
Right.
do that. I can handle that.
Right.
So for years, I just did that, knowing in the back of my mind I was a complete idiot, right? Because I wasn't taking advantage of tax laws, or I wasn't, putting
Like, did
things in
your
the right
own
place.
taxes?
Did my own
Oh.
taxes, even as a
Oh,
business owner.
wow. Damn.
Yeah. Then
Yeah.
like 3 years, no, about 5, 6 years ago, I finally was like, I'm sure I'm overpaying because I don't understand like
For
tax shelters and stuff like
sure.
that. Hired this lady. I gave her 2 years. Actually, her name's Sarah Jones. I plug her on the podcast. She was on our podcast like last summer, but Sarah's a CPA with an MBA and she's really good at tax strategy. And I gave her my taxes for 2 years. I just said, instead of like, don't sell me on what you do. Just here's
Right.
2 years. Tell me how much money I overspent by. And she was like, yeah, I could have saved you like $50,000 over the last 2 years. And I was like, you're hired. Like, just tell me how you're going to
Sarah
do it. So I know it's
Jones.
legit. And she's been awesome. And we've done much more stuff together since then, like set up like foundations and trusts and all kinds of things. So
Really?
yeah. So I'm just using her as like an example though of me getting
Yeah.
stuck in my old belief system,
Yeah.
which was based on some real things like global beliefs, life
Yes.
experience, but
Yes.
then allowing that to like then stop me from even growing, which is
Yeah.
hampering my company, which is hampering my family, and everything
Yeah.
else. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to figure out because I had the same thing with someone who's working in my business, and I was like, I don't think I need to pay you for this. I know it's better if I don't have to worry about it, but it's
Yeah.
like it's hard. It's hard.
Well, I think one of the most challenging ones as companies scale is actually the leadership one. And this is where entrepreneurs have
Why?
the biggest, because it's an ego thing. Like
Uh-huh.
Mark Zuckerberg, like him or don't, is a rare bird in that he took a company from IPO through this and he's still the CEO of it. And some probably say he shouldn't be, or Facebook's a
Right.
terrible, whatever.
Right.
But I'm just kind of saying he's running a multi-$100 billion company
Right.
from inception. That's super rare. Usually
Yeah.
what happens is the people like us can grow it to a certain level and then we just can't anymore, because especially in like, and take this the right way,
Yeah.
you would probably classify yourself an artist before you would classify yourself an entrepreneur, I would
No.
guess. No?
No, but only because I grew up the child of an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So I've been a little mini entrepreneur my whole life. We didn't get into my jewelry businesses, my photo business when I was like 10, you know. I
But
was
I guess an entrepreneur
yeah,
in my little classification here
sure.
is only in the business. A true entrepreneur, but the way I'm defining it, you don't really have to agree with the definition, but it's someone who's only in the business for the financial gain of that business,
Oh.
and to flip it or do whatever they can with it as quickly as possible to then move on to the next thing, or to use it as leverage to move on to the next thing. They're never really in it to build
Interesting.
it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a different, it doesn't mean that I also have huge entrepreneurial
Yeah.
instincts in the sense that
Right.
I did the same thing. I was actually stealing apples from our neighbor, and then I go sell them on like this off their trees. Not
Sounds like my
stealing, but you
life.
know what I
Yes.
mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
really asking permission.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And always had paper routes. Always had my little businesses. But at the
So
same
funny.
time, like in our business right now, I'm invested in it. I care about it.
Yeah.
And I'm part of the product of our
Yeah.
business, right? That's why I'm
Yeah.
doing a podcast right now.
Right.
And even if someone offered me money for it, I don't think I'd sell it right now. I mean, I might if the money was good enough, but you know what I mean? Like I'm really
Yeah.
into it. Where if I was a true, just hardcore entrepreneur, I'd be like, well, why am I running this thing if I don't have to? I need to be running something else. I need to be, doing something else. I need to be running 10 of these or whatever it might be. And so, usually people are classed as like either entrepreneurs or artists or manager leaders. And we all have a
Yeah.
little bit of all of that stuff in us. But for me, I sort of identify on the kind of artist, manager, leader thing. Like I like building teams. I like building companies for the long term. And I like being part of it long term versus just flipping it and selling it and kind of moving on.
I think that might be something I'm still discovering and figuring out because I do read a lot of articles about people that think about business in the way that you're saying, where they think
Yeah.
like, how can you scale it? How can you grow it? How can you sell it?
Right.
And it makes me look at my business differently. And
Right.
people have approached me, well, once approached me about, or twice, purchasing my business. And I didn't want to sell, not because I didn't want to sell. I didn't want to sell because I was like, it's not there
It's
yet.
not
Like
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, there's so much more that's
Yeah.
going to come before I would ever think about that.
Totally.
But I don't know. It's so interesting. I feel like I might be still developing, or maybe I'm like teetering all the time
No,
between the two.
no, I
That's
think that's
interesting.
fair. No, I think that's
Yeah.
super fair, and I think I think I teeter as well. Like I get the idea
Yeah.
of certainly of scaling. We're scaling big time right now, and
Yeah.
I get the idea of always having kind of an exit plan, right? I mean, I do think you
Mhm.
should build businesses as if you're going to sell them because you'll always run them better, right? If you're sort of like,
Oh,
I'm never selling,
interesting.
oh yeah, you always will. If you're sort of like, what if I need to sell this in a year? Then you'll make sure your books are cleaner. You'll make sure your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. You'll run a better business if you're
Oh,
always looking at it like, what if there was a medical emergency? What if this came up? What if that came up? And so I think if
right.
you're always running it as if you're going to exit, you're going to run it better, period.
Mm,
Um, And so I look at it that way, like what
Yeah.
is kind of our exit plan. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like being in it though.
That is so,
I like the day to
I
day.
don't know, man. Sometimes I don't know if I love building teams. I actually hired someone to help me build teams because I was like, you know what? I'm just trying to have my classes, my
Yeah.
clients. Just
So
like,
clients for you. So does someone come to you? Because I'm almost thinking of like this toy version of like Shark Tank or something. Like,
ah!
does someone come to you with like an idea and pitch it?
Yeah, sometimes people do that. Like, so I have a couple ways. Like, people work with me through one-on-one coaching virtually in Zoom, but I also have a course. So I call those more my students, like people that take my program, and then we have like weekly meetings, touch base. But then I have ongoing coaching clients. So usually people that are too advanced for Toy Creators Academy because maybe they already have a product on the market that's selling pretty well and they're not looking to start a new product. Then they'll work with me as like an ongoing client. We'll meet twice a month. I'll work on some areas of their business for them, but it's mostly like setting them up to like, so say I'm like, you need to pitch your toy at this angle in this month. Here's like the pitch materials you need to use. Here's the template. And then like you go do it. So
Oh,
it's like a
nice.
coaching done with
Yeah.
you kind of coaching where I do a little bit, but then I kind of push you to do the rest. Mostly I do that because the people that can afford that level of coaching can't afford the full done for you. So like
Right.
it would have to be much higher price if I was going to market and execute this all for you. So what I created this like kind of done with you option.
Do you ever take someone's idea and run with it? Like, have there been any ideas that have come to you, and been need to be refined, where they're just like, "Hey,
Yeah.
can
Oh
you do?"
yeah.
Yeah, that
All the
happens a
time.
lot.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like with the course, at the end of my program, I have a pitch event called the TCA virtual pitch event where I invite like Hasbro, Mattel, and retailers to come and see products from my students. So before they pitch, I have them submit their ideas to me, and then I just give
Nice.
them feedback. So like I look at the pitch video that they've learned to make through the course. I look at their pitch deck, and like I make comments on the product and the presentation. And one of my students, Chrissy Fagerholt, who's just been doing amazing lately, EAP Toy and Games, the lunchroom game. She
Nice.
one of her product, the lunchroom game, she like credits me in the program so much because she was pitching it to me, and I was like, "You're missing like what I call the surprise conflict moment." Which is a toyetic principle term I've coined, and I was like, "You're just missing this moment. It has to be something that like people don't expect is going to happen." And she took all of that feedback and she created something called, well, she already had the food fight element in her game, but there wasn't actually a food fight happening. And so she created something that felt like a food fight. So there's like this physical element of the game now when that card is played that just creates a new layer of excitement
Nice.
in the game. So yeah, so like stuff like that. I love being the person who comes in and just like gives them the gold and like backs away.
What
Like,
you just described really did
love it.
sound kind of Shark Tanky, though, right?
Yeah.
Like they're pitching, you're their pre. It's like, hey, you don't know your numbers. Hey, you don't know your product.
Yeah,
Hey, who's your
yeah.
target
Oh,
demographic or
it's
whatever, right?
so hard though. Like even some
Yeah.
of my clients, like they pitch ideas and I can see how it's not right for the toy industry as it is. And I'll tell them like, you need to change this. And
Yeah.
some of them, they're such artists. They're like, I can't change that. That's like the
Yes.
soul
It's
of
my
my
baby.
idea. It's the
Yeah.
baby. If I change that, it changes the meaning. And I'm like, but if you change that, Target will buy it. Like,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah. What did
it's
you come to
so,
me for if you don't
yeah,
want to
it's
hear
so
this?
hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to imagine that's one of the biggest challenges in your job is that people are paying you for advice that they don't always want to hear, right?
Yes, or don't have the time to take
Yeah.
or don't have the confidence. Confidence is one of the things I made my whole course, and the purpose of my course is to teach you how to pitch yourself so that you don't need to hire an agent and you can do it yourself. But I realized at the end of the program, people were not really pitching. So that's why I created the pitch event to kind of like help them through that first hurdle of like the nerves and like just not being sure if they're ready, because I felt like if I get you to that first pitch, you're going to see it's not that big of a deal. You're going to see your idea is good, and that is what happens. Now they're so confident they don't always come to my pitch event anymore, which I guess is
Right.
fine.
Yeah. They're
But
like too cool for it now.
yeah, they're too, now
Yeah.
the alumni like, too
Yeah.
cool for my pitch event. But
Like
yeah.
that's very 2022.
Yes,
I
like
don't
I'm
need to be
not a
there.
student anymore,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just,
I've graduated. Well,
yeah.
hey, what's next for you guys? What's
Oh,
next for you?
for the whole company,
Yeah.
there are a couple of things. What am I like? Okay, so we're doing more clients, which I didn't do last year at all. This ongoing coaching thing is brand new. It wasn't something I really took on. I have a streamlined system and package, and it's great, and it's working out really well. And we're going to be doing Toy Creators Academy again in May. We're going to be
That's all
launching.
online, I assume.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
online. We're going to be launching in March and May. And I mean, we're going to start launching in March with a toy creators boot camp, and then like April and May, the true launch will happen. And yeah, and then after that, we're working on getting to more toy trade shows to do more in-person interviews. If you check out my YouTube over the next couple of weeks, I have all these like in-person interviews dropping. So what we're working on is getting to more toy industry trade shows and interviewing toy creators to help you promote yourself and help the trade shows promote themselves. So I have like this backdrop. I actually made it into a physical backdrop and like I carried around and yeah. So
Super cool. No, I love it. I was actually, when I was looking at it, I was like, because I'm just using like artificial backgrounds, and I'm
oh
like,
yeah,
when I set up we're moving in a couple of months, and
yeah.
when I set up my new studio, I'm definitely gonna do some kind of mural. I like that.
It's amazing. My
Yeah.
best friend did it. And I asked her, I was like, if we move, can you do it again? And she was like, Azhelle, I don't like to paint the same thing twice. And I was like, wow,
You're like,
okay.
okay, well, you could do something different if you want.
No, I need
Hey,
the same thing. Branding. Okay.
it is pretty darn cool. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Love
Yeah.
your energy. Love your story of transferring like kind of out of corporate and being successful. And
Thank you.
sounds like the future is really bright for you. So thanks so much for
Oh,
joining me today.
thanks for having me, Ken. This was really cool.
You got it. I'll talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Talk to
Take
you
care.
soon. Take care.